bit is I honestly I have lost track. I have several hundred people I've interviewed in my career for roles. And a lot of that was at TD when I was working at TD. And so I've had loads of experience in the hiring for a number of roles, especially analytics and strategy roles, and both for my team and other teams. And so I can bring all that to bear. And so I just want to share that as context. And if you guys have any questions, please ask away as we go through this. And I'm happy to make this as interactive as you want it to be. So while I've got slides for you here, I'm not going to go through all the content. I mean, if we do, we have the time, but I'm hoping to just do some of it, leave it for you to digest and take away and use as you wish to use it. But make this interactive if possible, if you guys can ask questions, and I promise to pause, or you can put your hand up. I think that's a feature here. Or you can text in, or you can on the chat to Karen, and she can let me know as we go through. So the material is kind of reference for you, and I'll just highlight a little bit as we go through. The other piece that I didn't do, I was just talking with Karen as we're prepping this, is that I'm not going into the details on the basics of job search or job hunting or job networking. So I'm assuming you know that. Now, if not, we can get into some of that, but that's a lot there. And so there's lots out there, certainly stuff I'll refer to as some of the basics. So if you're not sure where I'm going with it or why I brought it up, please ask, and I'll try to give some context, but I wasn't going to go into that deep. So that's the pause right there as I sort of get myself set up here. Any questions? Just pop away or shout them out. Okay. Let me first say that I was asked by Karen to talk about sort of tips for job searching in certain times. Well, I don't know what to call them. I just call them the COVID-19 times. Let me say a couple things to you on that before we get into sort of the tips. I think the basics of any job search, there's three core things that I don't think will change. So how we execute them will change. But the three core things are, you're going to want companies, and so I don't have this on my slide, and I just brought this up. I was thinking about this as prepping for this session, so during today. So I just thought I'd add this value to you. Ultimately, when you're doing a job search, when you're interviewing, when you're networking, you want companies to see value and potential in you. So your whole purpose is the value part. What is the value that I or Karen or Lily would bring to or whoever would bring to a role, and what is the potential that you would bring to that role, in other words, for the next role or the next position. And I think it's important that that is your focus, is don't assume that the value that you bring is going to be automatically perceived or clearly perceived from your resume or from your LinkedIn profile. You need to do a bit of sales on yourself. So that doesn't change. The second thing you need to recognize when you're going for roles is that every company, every hiring manager out there has a bunch of tick boxes, and you need to tick those boxes, or at least enough of them that you sway them in your favor. And so don't underestimate that while you have great things, there are some things that are required for the role. So make sure you hit those. You can usually suss those out of the job descriptions. And if you look at them strategically, they may give you 40 items. You know there's only going to be 2 or 3 that are most important. Make sure you nail those and make sure you have them, and then you can speak to them directly. That's important. So that's a given. You got to show them the value. You got to tick the boxes. That's just basic 101. And then the third basic hygiene part of what a search is simply most hiring managers are not very good at hiring. Just put it out there. I've heard this from many recruiting firms. I've experienced myself. I was awesome at hiring, just awesome. And of course, Karen was great because she hired me, so that was awesome. Some of your other hires, I'm not so sure about, Karen, but I was awesome. But I think you got to understand, it was actually pointed out that you see that often. They're not very good. They don't know exactly what they want. They're not exactly clear how to figure it out. Their interview questions aren't very good. They're not very good interviewers. You'll find that more often than not. And all that means is don't freak out. We lost the screen again, Karen. Don't know what I have to do here. Sorry, I can't hear you, Karen.
I'm fixing it.
Okay. So what you have to do is you got to make sure you help them. So that's the key, is helping them. And so part of it is making sure you're able to help them through the process and convince them you're the right person. So that doesn't change. You've got those three things. Those are going to be the key requirements for any job, any time, COVID-19 or not. There's two other pieces, and I'm going to get to, well, a couple more pieces I want to give an overview. One is that you will probably see new approaches to roles. Like the traditional get a full-time job may disappear in the short term or the near term. You may find contract work is more prevalent. There may be interim work. There may be short-term work. They may look for consulting. You may want to, and you have to think about which it is that you want to go after, whether you're going to accept some role that's not full-time, part-time, contract, etc. I always advise people is do what's right for you, but understand that, especially if Karen's fact is true, then you're going to have many roles. So you need to be thinking about your career as a quilt, that you're putting all these pieces together. It doesn't have to be one or two. I mean, you could try to go for one or two jobs and over a period of time, or you can go for a number of experiences. So just decide how flexible you want to be and recognize there'll probably be more asked of you to be flexible in the near term than as a new grad than there's ever been before. That's just, I think the new reality for companies will be that. The other piece I wanted to call out is the networking will be enormously harder than it's ever been because of this online interaction that you're going to have to do. You're not going to be able to sit down across with someone. So we're going to get into that in a second and with some of my tips. The only reason I brought it up is that may become, going forward, more of the reality than not. I mean, you got to start to recognize that this may become part of the ongoing reality, that even in 3 or 4 months, if we luckily get back to somewhat normal, I actually think there'll be a lot of things that will continue on and track forward in terms of behaviors, including working from home, including more of an interactive online model in terms of interaction that we haven't seen before. So that's just a bit of my context. I apologize for not having that on a slide, but I was thinking about that this morning, and I thought I'd just put it out there for you guys. And I got a question from the prof.
So just a point to add that's in common with the people that are on the phone today is that the hiring managers are not good at it, and neither are they good at understanding new Canadians and the value that they bring. And that adds an extra complexity to the first 2 points that you did in terms of how do you sell the value that you offer with your international experiences, and how do you tick the criterias when one of the most significant criterias that they're looking for is existing Canadian experiences. And, and the same holds true for the data role, right? As companies are trying to become more data focused, they don't know what that means, right? They haven't built that culture of data-driven decision making, and they don't know how to build it, and the role that the data analysts that are applying for jobs play in helping the hiring manager understand that.
Yeah, I would. So you've got 3 points there. Let me respond. I think the first point about showing your value, I'm going to get to that. I think this situation we're entering into will allow you to do that easier than you've ever done before. So let me just be a very positive one on that one. I think there is a positive solution that I'm going to talk to you in a second. The second, about the relevant Canadian experience, that has always been an issue. I will not sugarcoat that. That is hard for a lot of hiring managers to get past, full stop. The advantage, so strategy, that was a whole different, we could spend hours on how you get around that if you're from the strategy realm. But if you're from the analytics realm, I think you can get around it. And one of the things I've noticed is that, contrary to what you just said, and not to disagree with the professor here, but what I have been hearing is that specific skill sets, it's almost like what technology went 20 years ago. When technology really started to get ingrained in companies, we're looking for very specific skill sets and very specific experience with technology and programming. And you're seeing that now with data and analytics, that if you have the right sort of skills in terms of the programming, then that overcomes some of that experience that they may have looked at before. So when I was back at TD, I don't know how many years ago, and we were hiring, I was looking for more generalists in terms of people with some flexibility and with some knowledge and capability to translate what was going on and to understand the business context. A lot of roles are now moving away from that, which I think is a mistake, but they are, and they're now just looking for people who can just crunch numbers using certain skills and tools. So if you got those skills and tools, big check mark. I think you can get around some of that in Canada experience. The final plus I'll say is whoever it was that had smartly got PM experience, huge plus. Just I'm going to keep emphasizing that. Like those kind of skills are vital for companies because every role now requires project management. There we go. Woohoo! Indeed. So let me get to some of the tips themselves. And I think what's important for everybody to there's a lower hand. I don't know what that means. So.
Hi. This is
Oh,
Shabab.
hi.
I raised my hand, Greg.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask you, just wanted to go back to what you're saying about the skills in the IT realm and stuff. Will the project management student graduating with project management will be able to work in that field without having any IT project management background, or if it's like just a regular financial project management, or just
Yeah.
will they be able to work in projects that require IT or construction or something like that?
So what I've seen is that that certain roles you don't need the specialization in the particular area. So you do need the specialization in project management and even the designation like PMP, et cetera, but you can sort of jump into different roles without having depth in that particular field, either IT or construction or whatever. And let me pause on that. I think if you're coming out new or more entry level or I'll use the word junior, as they sometimes call it, roles, I think that's easier to get into. And so you may need to, but will you ever get to a point as you get more senior that you can jump around? I think not. And I haven't heard that happening too much. I think people start to get siloed. What I was also referring to is that if you get project management, a lot of jobs that are not often thought of as needing project management actually are looking for project management in the job. So analytic roles, as Karen and I were talking earlier, those, there's a lot of that work requires a project management skill, or it could actually be very helpful to your career to have that skill.
So in that case, that you're saying that we can apply to roles that doesn't have any project management roles, they don't want any project management roles right now. We can all apply in places different to like a project coordinator or a junior project management role.
Yes.
I think you can, yes. And I think you and one of the things that people always talk about, which I find hard when you're starting out, is they tell you got to have a career strategy, you got to have sort of the trajectory for your career. And I think I think what you want to do when you is have more flexibility than narrowness. You may need to narrow to get your first job, but you need to be open to how this could evolve over time as things change. I'm writing one of the blog posts that I'm writing next week is about what is the effect of COVID. What are the things that might stick coming out of this, and what are things that might change? And one of the things that occurred to me is that there's probably going to be a new normal coming out of this whole experience, and that companies are going to adapt to a new way of working and thinking. Not like tomorrow, but I think as it goes forward, they're going to find that, hey, this remote working is actually can work for us. As Karen and I have talked before, like some companies are reluctant to allow people working from home or working from remote hubs. They got to be here, and I think that's all going to change. I think they're going to see that it works. Price doesn't blow up. We can be productive, and I think you're going to find some companies are going to start to try to have to catch up with other companies who already are thinking that way and are already setting themselves up. So my big thing to all you guys is you got to understand that a new norm or a new normal was going to come out in probably the next 18 to 24 months. It's going to come out gradually. There'll be things that change, and some things won't spring back to where they used to be. And you need to be thinking about it and being adaptive and flexible to sort of adjust to those new normals that didn't exist a month, 2 months ago. And I think that's the first thing I would say. Be flexible, be adaptive, recognize it's going to be a new normal. And just before I jump on, did I answer your question about the PM stuff? I hope I did. If not, put your hand
Yes,
up.
amazing. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. The other thing I want you guys to think about and recognize is that this is going to go on for a while. And so I don't have any answer when it's going to end, but it's going to go on for a while. So think about it as there's a couple things, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of stuff we put on hold. I'm hearing from a lot of contacts that a lot of roles are just not, they're not going to be able to fill them right away, or they don't know when they'll fill them. Doesn't mean you don't apply, because you can get in the hopper, you can get in the short list, but also I would say, and this is probably the most critical thing, if you can think strategically, is this is a time to prepare yourself for when things start to move forward. And I think this is going to be most critical, that you are in the best position you can get yourself into for when hiring will start. And I think it will, and I think IT, analytics, the whole data side, that's all going to be part of the prime hiring areas. They may not be full-time jobs. I'm hearing a lot of mixed things about that, but I am hearing there's a lot of pent-up need to drive greater efficiency in a new way of operating in the future, and these could be roles that people will want, and so you should prepare yourself so that when the doors, when the floodgates open, as it were, you're in the best position to take advantage of it.
Even in the short term, right, from a supply chain and stuff like that, it's, how logistics roles,
Yep.
how to get materials out. They don't have enough people in those roles right now.
Totally not. And I think a lot of companies are going to recognize that. I think this is a bit of a wake-up call. Like when I worked with at TD, and I've worked with other banks, and I worked with an insurance company, Manulife, they didn't feel there was any risk that the way they were working worked fine. What I'm hearing now is they're all going, maybe the way we're set up and working is not fine. This is impacting us. We need to work differently. We need to think about differently. We need to get better skills in certain areas. So I'm agreeing with you, Karen. I think that there's going to be a demand that they need across a lot of places, and that you guys don't get discouraged, but just recognize it may take a little time for things to come about. Okay. Okay. Slide 2, finally getting to it, 20 minutes in, doing great.
Yeah.
Sorry? Hello?
Yeah, so I have something to add. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. So I have something to add to what you just mentioned about being adaptive and flexible, right? It's very, very important. And take into consideration job search and I'll say mental health. It's very, very important to be adaptive, to adjust yourself to the current changes and also be more flexible. And that leads to being able to what? Focus on things that you can control, right? So we have things that you can control at this moment and things that you cannot control. So I would say, well, you don't have to focus much on things that you can control, right? So in terms of job search, you cannot control why businesses are downsizing or why businesses are laying off employees, right? These things you can control. And things that you can control will be, to upgrade yourself, right? To learn new skills, to be more competitive. So I think in this moment, that's one thing that we can all learn from this. Yeah.
Totally agree, and it's well said, and it's a good perspective, what you control, what you cannot control, and I would suggest to everybody that use that as your lens when you look at things and and as you have to respond to things that come along. That's a great lens to use. And thank you, Andy. You've also set up my next slide, so that's awesome. Let me just say, as a high level, I just quickly developed 4 areas for tips. And they're sharpen your tools, have a plan, make your search your job, and work smartly. A lot of these are common things normally. And but I wanted to talk about it, and I think the big thing on sharpen your tools there's a bunch of points there. Some of that's basic job search 101. I just want to draw your attention to the last bullet of equip yourself to be virtual. I think this is harder for some people to do than for others. And you need to figure out what is the technology, make sure you can use it. While you have this technology, George Brown, what do you have outside of school? Are you set up on Zoom? Are you set up on other platforms? Do you have the right space? I don't have the greatest space. I'm actually rearranging my office. Look at this, I think a picture right behind my head. I should move that. But you need to look at that and consider what people see when they see you, the lighting. And then you need to practice speaking and having a dialogue through this new medium. And I have practice here, and I'm going to say that there's another point in a couple slides that I can come back to about practicing. Use this time to practice and get good at using this technology and this form of interaction, because you want this not to be any way diminish you. You want this to at least allow you to get across and to be as effective as you can be. Don't let it hurt you in any way. So use this time to get good at this.
And some of the things that we talk about in practicing is how do you make sure that you don't talk over somebody? So you have that couple seconds delay, and how to practice the handoffs between one person and another person. Very hard online.
Yeah, agreed. And I think one of the things I picked up on doing a lot of online meetings is and again, as the more experienced you are, if we did this a lot, we'd be more attuned if I was partnering with someone like Karen on this. But there's always that pause. Build in a pause so that there's an opportunity for someone to step in on what you've said. So when you've ended something, think of it in short chunks. This is one of those techniques.
Yeah, because smaller discussions, smaller points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also the validation step. That happens in live meetings too, but what I'll say, did I answer your question? Then I pause because I may not be able to see clearly, especially in some of the technology, I may not be able to see the facial expression to know whether the person is satisfied with what they heard from me or not. So you may need to just ask those things.
Yeah.
Nice. So you got this time. So while you're out doing everything else, you get your resume, you got your LinkedIn going on up top, and you've got you're building out your stories and getting your profile built up. You want to make sure you don't let the tool of online interaction to hurt you in any way or diminish what you're trying to do. So I would say make sure in this time you get yourself brushed up on that. Okay. Let me jump to the plan. So I'm a big advocate that. Oh, Lily's got a question. Here we go. Hi, Lily.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for sharing about the sharpen your tools. And I saw in your previous slide you mentioned about having a second profile. You mean like a secondary site or website to complement your LinkedIn?
Yes. So I actually. It's funny when you construct these because I didn't spend weeks building it. I do have some repetition. I'm actually going to pick up on this point in the next slide, actually. So can I come back to that in 2 seconds? And if I don't answer it, put your hand up again, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's a great point. So one of the things that I've observed is that one of the things I was saying earlier when I answered the question, and I was saying to Karen, I think with things moving to an online interaction model, it does give you a bit, and it was moving there anyway. So let's just recognize that in the last several years, more and more things were moving to the online environment. More and more of your presence online was being consumed by potential employers, especially through LinkedIn, and actually primarily through LinkedIn, but it doesn't have to be that. So one of the things I have observed with a number of folks is that there's a secondary presence. So if you look at the third bullet at the bottom there, it says stand out. What I'm going to suggest you to think about is how do you stand out from your competition And so, and you got to think about your brand, your own personal brand, and the strategy of your job search, and you know what a lot of that means is what kind of roles you're going after and how you can present yourself. But there's a lot you could be doing to start to differentiate yourself and pull away a bit from others who are maybe going for the same roles and same jobs as you. One of those things could be your volunteer work. It could be complementary skills, as Andy was saying earlier, to get professional certifications or designations or groups you're part of. But it also could be you building a presence. So, and so I'm going to jump ahead, but let me answer the online presence specifically, or I have here an online voice. So one of the things that a lot of people look for or have been looking for is, and I'm going to pick on you, Lily, because you asked questions, so I apologize, but I'll pick on you. You know, I got Lily's resume, or I have her profile in LinkedIn, and it should look pretty much like her resume. The content should be the same. But if I'm a job searcher, I'm trying to find more about Lily to get a better sense of who she is. I'm not talking about personal stuff. I'm not talking about Facebook or anything. I'm talking about her as a professional. And so what can I, you know, if I have a secondary site, she has a link, a URL to another site that's her professional site, much like consultants have, but it isn't, she's not consulting, but she's profiling herself, and it allows her to add more of her character and more of her thinking. If she's writing stuff, blogs, etc., that can be on this other site. One idea I've given to people is to do specific deep dive research into topics and areas in their field. So this is like continuing school, if you like, and more assignment, but you'd say what are the hot topics out there right now in this field I'm going in? One that would be, I think it's been around for a while, maybe lessening is important, but with these examples, machine learning, okay, I got that. What does it really mean, and how does it apply to certain companies? If I'm targeting, say, FIs, what would that mean? Or what would fintech look like in terms of FI, financial institutions to these days? And you, in this time of this period of rest, if you like, of this waiting, you could spend several days doing a deep dive researching stuff online. Then you can summarize it in a one-pager. They can post that on your site. You can share that as a link, you know, to protect when you're networking, because it's always good to give value back to somebody. And you're saying, hey, Lily, you know, Lily's talking to me and says, I'm interested in just networking, and she says, by the way, I'm doing some research on the latest trends in fintech that's been going on. Let me throw that out to you. Oh, let me just fix my mic. Sorry, guys. Let me send that to you so you can get. And so I'm going to give you some value, person I'm networking with, but I'm also showcasing some of my skills and some of my thinking and some of my expertise. And so when you think about, I'm going to get to you, Andy, 2 seconds. When you think about building a presence, you're just trying to showcase yourself in a way that helps complement your job experience, which may be light when you're starting, so you're trying to bring in other pieces to make that make yourself look more robust. Andy, jump in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig. Yeah, so I'd like to add something to what you just mentioned about stand out or standing out. Is very, very important. What I've realized is that most business analytics students or data analytics students, they do a lot of like stuff in their programs, but to showcase it always, I would say, is always a problem, or it's always a challenge. Um, they sometimes post stuff on their LinkedIn. You know, I got this certification, I did this. That is fine, but I also think to stand out, you can have a portfolio. So having a portfolio, I'll say to have a portfolio, right? So a portfolio will be a website that communicates to employers, or even communicate to the masses that, hey, this is who I am, and this is what I have, right? This is what I'm capable of doing, right? So these are my credentials, experience, and so on and so forth. So whilst you are managing your website, at least you try to what? Upgrade or update the content on your website, right? So always you're trying to search for new stuff, right? Or new items to put on your website. And in doing so, this helps you stand out as compared to maybe like just posting an item on LinkedIn and no updates, right? So I think having e-portfolio or even having a normal portfolio itself will help. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's think about. I agree with that, but think about, just go a little bit further. Let's just extend your thinking a little bit by, remember what I said earlier, and I wish I put it on a slide for you guys, but if you took notes, you know what I'm talking about. When I said you need to show companies the value and your potential, think about complementary areas that the company may be intrigued about you. So it's an analytics role, and you have, as we said, project management experience. Okay, that's a good thing, right? But also, how knowledgeable are you on the latest trends going on in the space? And so if I'm an analyst and I want to hire somebody like Lily again, I'm going to want to know, does she have and she's right out of school, great, but has she tried to broaden her understanding of what's going on in the field? Has she tried to absorb that? If I bring her in and we suddenly get a new project that has involved fintech, and you guys should know what fintech is, and you should also know insurtech, and or whatever it may be, but you also understand that what was written about it 5 years ago is actually out of date. So the question is, do you know what the current thinking, applications, examples are? Have you thought, is this something that you're up to speed in terms of general terms, so that if that is something a company may be looking to hire someone who has that experience, they don't have to start from zero with you. You actually have something, a leg up over someone else. And so this is all what I say about having your online presence, having a secondary site because LinkedIn only gives you so much. But before we jump off that, I just want to say, fill out your LinkedIn. There's many categories, there's skills, experiences, interests. Make sure that is as complete as you can get it. And then consider doing something, something like WordPress is easy to do, or some other platform to help further showcase you. Now, I'm going to pause, and I'm just going to jump back. Lily, did I answer your question from 5 minutes ago?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions at this stage? Okay. So slide 3. So this is actually a general term, make your search your job. It means you got to work at it, and you got to be focused. And that's not different than any other time. And there's some points on here that you can read through. I just want to draw your attention to the second bullet: set up virtual support groups. Let me just underline for you how important that's going to be, especially in this lower engagement environment, and you guys coming right out of school. Support groups are really good. They're not necessary, for example, like they're not a requirement, but I think they're really good. The ability to journey along or share in the journey of a job search with colleagues who are doing similar things, to get feedback, to share ideas, to bounce things off them, get suggestions and updates and stuff people are hearing about, to not use it as a competitive forum, but as a collaborative forum. And the third bullet is to practice. So as we talked about a few slides ago about practicing online, practicing your interviewing, practicing having discussions, who better than people who are going through it, and do it with partners and peers before you go out in doing it live. So I thought, I've seen that work so many times. Every outplacement transition firm out there has some form of this. It works even if you're an introvert. It's best if introverts work with introverts, trust me. So get groups of people, classmates or other people and I work these, and I think the key is you got to put the time and energy into it, and you'll get the results out of it. But you got to invest in it, and then you got to make it work. But I think it can be really helpful for you, especially as I said earlier, in the next 2 years, you're going to see a lot of change, and a lot of the new norms are going to come out, and you want to get people to help you understand what is happening and how to interpret what's going on. Karen, you want to add anything to that?
You know what? I don't have anything to add. I thought you did a great job.
Oh, Oh, I used to get that all the time, guys. Did a great job. Awesome. Let me just jump to number 4. So this is actually, Andy was talking about this before, and this is about controlling what, worrying about stuff you can control versus you can't control. Let me just say that your mental well-being is probably your biggest hurdle that you need to worry about. Because job searching can be lonely, it can be frustrating, it can be high anxiety, and in these times of high ambiguity, it's just compounded. So the support group, having a group that you're journeying with will help a lot. And then I think, but you've got to sort of be very conscious of that lens that Andy talked about worrying about stuff you can control, not control, and recognizing that this is there's stuff going on that's totally like the second bullet. There's a lot of uncertainty and new realities coming out, and companies aren't going to have it figured out in 6 months. They will not. There'll be some that will get some of it, but they won't really get it figured out. So you need to be prepared for that. And my biggest suggestion to you, and I know this it may ring hollow if you're desperate to get a job and all that, but when you go out and networking and job searching, you need to think about the long game. This is not just the next job that you need to get. You are out talking to people who you could potentially be talking to for the rest of your career at different stages. It is a small world. It's amazing how many people I have run into, and they run into me that are in the same field or related fields. This is Canada specifically is there's this concentration in Toronto. I think if you get frustrated or short-tempered or impatient, it will hurt you. Don't. This is a long game, and if something doesn't come out, if you spent you got a role, you're being interviewing with Karen, and you've gone through 3 rounds of interviews and 8 people, and then they say, we're not moving forward with the job. You just got to say, great, I really give the right answer, because there's some stuff going on that's not in their control. They may pull the job out from under you, but don't let it affect you. That's all I can say. Just try to keep it in perspective. It's too important for your career to blow it on just one particular time, which is going to be a lot of stuff happening.
And I think that the idea of the data club that we're putting together here, it's a community that will help us to work together through this time.
Perfect. Yeah.
We can all collaborate and learn together and practice together. And Toronto's small, but from a student's perspective, it seems like it's a big world. But it is, once you get into your industry and the people that you're working with, you'll meet somebody. Well, as an example, Richard Boyer and we worked together 30 years ago. And then it's a professor that the students work with. So we worked together 30 years ago, and here we are 30 years later working together again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the world is small. We move around and we rotate within the same companies. There's only 5 banks of significance, right? So we're moving around in the same companies. There's only 5 fast food places. If you're in logistics and supply chain, you're going to move around amongst that group. So don't burn bridges. And the people that you're talking with today are going to help you get a job 10 years from now.
Most likely.
Right.
And yeah. And you'll meet somebody who knew the person you talked to today.
Yeah.
Or knows them. And that's all part of that quilt of
and that's the value of networking.
Yeah. And I think the challenge with networking for introverts has always been it's really hard to do. The upside for people in data analytics is it is a really small community, so it's not, and they're mostly people like you, so it's not that as hard as you think. They're not going to be extroverts that you're going to be interacting with. So you're dealing with similar people. And the online interactive form, while not as good, honestly, is not as good as face-to-face is actually a little more comfortable for introverts to use the online form for interaction. And so long as you're sort of you're comfortable with it, then it can work to your advantage. And you may even find it work better, because in the new reality, you may find certain roles and certain people are all going to be online more so than going to an office downtown. And I think IT and analytics are going to be part of the group that say, hey, I actually don't mind. Now, analytics I know has some problem because of access to data, so I know that's a bit of an issue for remote access. So until they solve that, that may be a hindrance, but I think you'll find to be a lot more online. So those are my 4 bucket areas, a lot of content. Some of it's pretty obvious if you've done job search before, but if it's new to you, then it may not be as obvious. Let me just pause and say, is there any questions and anything that you want me to go back over, or anything you want to explain or address?
Benji, I've seen you coming in and out. Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're good.
So no questions? We're good? Oh,
Oh,
from
Lily.
Lily. Yes.
Yeah, so I have the question about, so go back to your point at the beginning. You're talking about tick the boxes, and well, when we look at the job description, we can see that there's a lot of skills that require. And how do you know which one is like the main criteria that the hiring manager are going to look for?
Yeah. So that is hard. And yes, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes it can be 20 or 30 items listed that they're looking for. So I'm going to answer that question, and I apologize if it will not be a complete answer, because it's actually quite complex. So there's 2 things to think about. One is when you see a job, the more you see a job and talk to your professors and talk to your colleagues, there are some things that are rudimentarily important to the job. So and they're usually going to be caught up in the job description of requirements, etc., and they become the basic sort of table stakes, if you guys know that term, for the job. And those are important, but they may not be the deciding factor. So there, to my mind, some of the tick boxes, like we used to have a SaaS shop when we were at TD, and I don't think they are anymore because SaaS is other programming, but at the time that was the state of the art. So that probably dates me for you guys.
We're promoting SaaS here.
Are we? Okay. And so I had, as a tick box, Lily, you had to have SaaS experience. Now, to me, that's just for you to get into the game. In fact, I wouldn't even interview you or bring you in if you didn't have SaaS experience. And so, but there was other things we looked for, and so you want to sort of try to decipher what are the other things from this list, and usually it's towards the top of the list of requirements that you think would be related to the role or the company that seems to make sense. And so give me an example. That often we'll see IT jobs where they'll list certain experience working with certain technology, but they'll typically now have certain types of PM skills like
Agile.
Agile is a great example, and they'll call that out. And so that's like a little bit obvious, but that is them narrowing the focus, saying, hey, I need you to have these skills working with these enterprise solutions, and you need to have experience working in an agile, work environment. And that becomes a secondary sort of hit. And once you get 3 or 4 of those, the rest are just added stuff. They're not actually they're critical, but they're not that critical. And so the other thing I'll say, Lily, is that you won't know, and this is my second point, is that when you have understood who you are and your strategy and what are your key stories and your key attributes, if in the list of 10, the top 6 or 8 items are asking for in the job description, and you can figure out 2 of them, these are obviously the most important, and I don't know what to make of the next 6. If 2 of those fit your 2 strengths, then make them the top 2. You may be wrong, They may be, I didn't really want that, but that's your best way to play yourself into a role, is play your cards that you have.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have all this depth of PM experience and they have that, you're not necessarily going to get past the gate. But if you have those two and then they got like 6 or 8 other things, you may not be able to hit all 8 of those. So you make sure you hit the ones that you can hit and you push them forward. It's a bit of a roll of the dice, but and you may need to be very adaptive in the interview, because you may be, if you do the interview right, you may be able to pick up real quick what are the top things, and then you just need to adapt on the fly to make sure you address those things.
Because I think, Greg, if you go back to the third point that you said about the managers aren't really good hiring managers, always, that they might have started the process with an idea of somebody that they want,
Right.
and by the end, totally change their mind.
I've seen it. Yep.
Real.
And I also think you'll see that this happens a lot, guys. That you'll see often you'll see job descriptions that have been taken from other job descriptions, and
Cut and paste.
and he may not even have corrected some of this terminology they should have updated. And so often it's a cut and paste, and usually that is to fill it out, or they want to make sure they're getting a good robust sampling of people. But honestly, it's only going to be a handful of things they really, really want in that role, and the rest is just how you stand out from everyone else.
And sometimes they just put stuff in there so that they can hire the person that they had originally intended to hire anyways, but it had to be the job posting.
Yeah, now you're just being cynical, boss.
I'm starting to.
I think it's less. 1 second, Andy. I think it's less likely for analytic roles that they have someone in mind.
Wow, I think it, because it's going to flip flop between, is it better to have industry experience, or is it better to have technical analytics experience? And that trade-off. Yep. That's a very common trade-off.
And where I was going is that the entry-level roles tend to be
maybe not
coming out of schools rather than and peer groups or entry-level rather than people they have already in mind. Andy, sorry, you wanted to ask something.
Yeah, so I want to add something to what you and Kevin just mentioned about upgrading yourself in terms of experience. So chances of high demand for data analysts after this crisis will be very high. The reason being, most businesses might redesign their business model, and they might rely on data, right, to make insight decisions. So this brings us to, okay, so how do I upgrade myself, or what are some of the skills that I need at this moment? So as you mentioned, PM, right? So project management skills, if you're able to get agile, that is very, very good, right? Because most businesses now be working on projects to be able to recover from the crisis. And also from what Karen said, technical skills and industry skills, right? So if you're an entry level, right, I would say you might not have enough industry experience, but you can also build on your technical skills. So, well, I'm happy you mentioned about machine learning, right? So you can also look into machine learning and then human analytics. So human analytics is also important because most of the data from businesses rely on what? Stakeholders, and they are all human. So it's very good to look in such areas, as you mentioned, PM, project management, machine learning, human analytics, and so on and so forth. So it's very
There's
good.
lots of topics, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can get into this experience, but I would suggest that you research to death an industry if you're targeting an industry. So if you're analytics, you want to target, you're in Toronto, obvious FIs are a big players in Toronto. So make sure you understand what's going on in those companies. Make sure you understand specifically what's going on in an individual company. I'm not talking about reading their annual report because that's kind of boring. You want to be able to do searches around anything that has bubbled up about them, analytics, or any of these subtopics. Don't underestimate, by the way, everyone, that a lot of analytics are in certain companies are feeding their innovation practice.
Mhm.
So where I would have thought innovation, 20 years ago was more little sort of incubator kind of things were off to the side, and it's more creative thinking. A lot of innovation now is driven out of analytics, and analytics is a driver of it. And so look for those kind of things, because they do like to crow about how innovative they are, a lot of these FIs, and you may pick up some stuff about where they've been spending their time in innovation. And you'll see a lot of that innovation is just efficiency, process improvements, efficiency, getting better at stuff, logistic management, and that's where they're spending their time, and that tells you where they're focusing. Yes, Karen.
And while you have the time, particularly for those that have graduated, use the library resource sources to get a better understanding of your industry and the disruptions in those industries, using the sources that we learned about, like the IBIS reports and the I forget the name of that other one, the global, the one that does the global reports on industries. They've got a lot of econometricians doing reviews of what's happening with COVID-19 from industry perspectives, and you have access to that information for free through the library for this short period of time until you graduate.
And let me just give you another tip to build on what Karen just said, which is you can get access to industry trends also through consultancies and what they have available on their website. So PwC, McKinsey, BCG, all like to pump out their reports on trends. I managed, when I was working at Manulife, we got a ton of information. I think it was out of PwC on InsurTech from around the world. It was all readily available on the internet. You just had to go in and search and dig in a bit and maybe sign up. And it may not be the full report you can get access to, but you at least get the sense of what's going on and who's doing what in that space. And if anybody who has strategy in their backgrounds from a course, then you step back and you understand what's the trends that's going on that I can think about when I talk to these companies, where their heads may be at. So that's available just through the internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just trying to sell the library.
I'm sorry.
You weren't getting it.
No, I wasn't. Any other questions? So you guys
ready to get a job? Ready to network? Ready to update your skills? Your job search tools?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So anybody's got any questions, you can ping me. I don't know if my email got on this, but I think it was in the invite. Linda. Why do I keep calling you Linda? Who's Linda? Who is she?
I don't know. It's not me.
Karen. I think it was in the invite, Karen, my email.
Yes, your LinkedIn was in the invite.
So just ping me, and if you got any questions, and I'll just say, I mean, it's a little, good luck is what I want to say, but also it's, you got to make that luck, right? So you got to work at it, and it'll come out for you. I'm positive.
Some of that work smart thing.
Yeah, I mean, look at the professors you had. How can you not be successful?
Right, Andy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Okay. Thanks so much, Greg. That was really it was great, right? Just to sit down and think about the bigger picture. And Shabab, you can, as well as all of the members, you can find him on LinkedIn, Greg.
Yeah, just ping me if you want to get linked.
But make a nice introduction to remind him where you met.
Yeah. And
Andy?
Andy?
Yeah, Craig, thanks so much. This is so informative, and I think most students will need such information, right, in this trying time. So it's very good that Karen and Anissa were able to organize this. But I would say this is really, really good, really good. And I hope every student can get such information. All right. So yeah, thanks so much. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Good luck, guys.
Thanks,
Stay well.
Greg. And just
Okay.
before you guys sign off, I want to remind you about, we've got a couple of other sessions coming up. So every Friday from 3 to 5, we're going to try to set up some sessions, and you're welcome to come. May 1st, Anissa and Xavier are going to come and talk about storytelling and analytics compared to a technical presentation. On May 8th, we've got a former student, a former alumnus who's going to speak about her new Canadian experiences in the job search. And I forget the other ones, but we'll post them on, we'll be posting them on the LinkedIn group. Okay. Congratulations on finishing this semester. I hope you have a great time.
congratulations, all.
Yeah, right. All right. Have a good one, guys. I'll release the recording as well on LinkedIn. Thank you, Shabab. Thank you, Paige.
All right. Thank you, Karen.
All right, I'm signing off. Thank you, Aniruddha. Stay safe.